The liquidation of the UFO researchers. Dr. M. K. Jessup. Dr. M. K. Jessup wrote 1955 a book, The Case for the UFO. He argued that unidentified flying objects, worthy of further study. Jessup also linked ancient monuments with aliens years before similar claims were made. Eric von Däniken in his book Chariots of the Gods. Jessup believed in the mythology of humans, which included the mythical lost continent of Atlantis, Mu, and Lemuria. The year 1958 his wife left him and his friends described him as being somewhat unstable. When he traveled to New York after returning to Florida, he was involved in a serious car accident. On April 19, 1959, Jessup contacted Dr. Manson Valentine and arranged a meeting. He claims to have made a breakthrough regarding an event known as the Philadelphia experiment. However, on April 20, 1959, Jessup was found dead. A pipe led the exhaust gas to the rear window of the vehicle. Dr. James McDonald. James McDonald tried to convince Congress to look into the UFO situation. He died after shooting himself a short while later in 1954. Long time before he was driving through the Arizona desert with meteorologists. They spotted an unidentified flying object. None of these atmospheric physics could identify the object. McDonald examines UFO reports in greater detail and was able to offer explanations for some using his security clearance with the U.S. government. He also uncovered a number well-documented UFO reports by the U.S. Air Force that even after deep analysis remain as identified objects. March 1971, McDonald's wife, Betsy told him she wanted a divorce. In April 1971, he attempted suicide by shooting himself in the head. He survived but was wheelchair-bound for a short period. On June 13, 1971, a family walking along a creek near Tucson found a body that was later identified as McDonald's. A .38 caliber revolver was found close to him as well as a suicide note. Yvonne T. Sanderson. Yvonne T. Sanderson passed away unexpectedly. He was head of a major UFO and paranormal group. Sanderson earned a BA and a Master in Zoology from Cambridge University's Faculty of Biology. He became famous for claiming being attacked by a creature he described as the granddaddy of all bats and a flying dinosaur. During World War II, Yvonne Sanders worked for British naval intelligence. He was charged with counter-espionage against the Germans in the Caribbean. He died of brain cancer in New Jersey. Since Sanderson's death, specific allegations have been repeatedly published stating that he died from a brain tumor triggered by some sort of weapon. Rummel. Rummel was an Air Force intelligence agent and the publisher of the Alien Digest. He died on August 6, 1993. Rummel allegedly shot himself in the mouth with a pistol. However, no blood was found on the pistol barrel. The handle of the weapon was free of fingerprints. The suicide note was written by a left-handed person. Rummel was right-handed. On June 2, 1995, Fox TV discussed his death. Before he passed away, Rummel had been researching the deaths of over 30 British scientists. The scientists had been working on top-secret projects in the British defence industry. These projects included mind control and the implantation of devices in the brain without the recipient being aware of it. The scientists were found with their hands and feet bound. The British press had broad coverage while the American press was completely silent. Ron Johnson. Ron Johnson was 43 years old and had excellent health. However, on June 9, 1994, while attending a Society of Scientific Exploration meeting in Austin, Texas, Johnson died. He died quickly and in very strange circumstances. During a slideshow, several people sitting close to him heard a gasp. When the lights turned back on, Johnson was slumped over in his chair, his face purple. A soda can from which he had been sipping was on the chair next to him. Johnson's recent job was with the Institute of Advanced Studies working on UFO propulsion systems. He had been formerly employed by a think tank headed by Harold Buthoff. He held high security clearance and traveled frequently between San Antonio and White Sands. Dr. Alan Hynek. Although advanced in years, there are some who believe that Dr. Hynek's death was because of strange circumstances. At the first International UFO Congress in Chicago in 1977, Dr. Hynek presented his thoughts. In his speech, he presents a new hypothesis. All material could be in a state of physical matter or psychic matter. There are stars in the universe that are millions of years older than the Sun. There are civilizations millions of years more advanced than ours. We have gone from Kitty Hawk to the moon and only in some 70 years. It's very possible that a million-year-old civilization knows things we cannot even dream about. Anne Livingston. Anne Livingston made her living as an accountant, but she was an investigator too. She published 1993 an article entitled Electronic Harassment and Alien Abductions. Strongly criticized, the director of the Electronic Surveillance Project Julian McKinnon. Anne Livingston died in early 1994 of a fast form of ovarian. On December 29, 1992, Anne Livingston's apartment suddenly appeared with a silver-white flashlight. She saw 5 men in black which she described as being almost faceless. And she was rendered unconscious. Karla Turner. Dr. Karla Turner died of cancer on January 10, 1996. She was just 48 years old. She earned a PhD in Old English Studies and taught at the university for more than 10 years. 1988, she and her husband and son endured a shocking series of experiences and recollections that forced them to recognize that they were all abductees. Karla's response was to drop her professional university career and turn her full attention to abduction research. Her first book, To the Fringe, told of her own experiences and those of her family. Her second book, Taken, was about the alien human abduction. The abduction stories of 8 women. Her recent book was Masquerade of Angels, co-written with Ted Rice. The book was about lifelong encounters with strange entities that hovered in a shadow between angelic and demonic. Karla was working on another book when she died in 1996. Danny Casolaro. Danny Casolaro investigating a program called Promise capable of tracking down anyone anywhere in the world. He was in the process of writing a book entitled, The Octopus, about a multi-leveled corporation between industry, military and security agency owned and controlled by a retired CIA and NSA agent. His research papers and manuscript for his book were nowhere to be found. Mae Busell. Mae Busell was an investigative radio host. She died of fast-acting cancer just like Anne Livingston and Karla Turner. In November 1963, President John Kennedy was assassinated. This was the catalyst that propelled her career. She began this journey by purchasing the 26-volume set of Warren Commission. The course of the research took her through Black Ops, to Nazi collaboration, to sponsor terrorism and false flag operations. On December 16, 1970, her daughter Bonnie Brussels was killed in an automobile accident. Mae believed was a warning to her as she exposed linked elements in the U.S. military to satanic cults. She knew about the struggle within the Reagan administration and asks who will be the one that will be killed first. The following morning President Reagan was shot in Washington, D.C. On May 29, 1968, Mae met Rose Kennedy at the Monterey Peninsula Airport and handed her a note. The note told Rose that her son Robert Kennedy soon will be assassinated. A week later he was shot to death at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. She broadcast on her radio channel. The CIA and the FBI were set up to protect citizens of the USA. They became their own judges and juries, Private servants of corporations. Prime witnesses are murdered before or after testifying. Diaries are forged and planted. Doubles are created to confuse and manipulate facts. I am outraged that our judicial system, she wrote. Ryan Lynch. Brian Lynch, a young psychic and contact, died in 1985 purportedly of a drug overdose. According to Lynch's sister Geraldine, Brian was approached approximately a year before his death by an intelligence operative. He was offered to work for an Austin, Texas sci-tech company. Brian told her that they were experimenting with psychic warfare techniques. There were rumors that Nazi Germany was developing such capabilities. In 1961, the Office of Technical Services contacted Stephen Abrams about ESP. Abrams was the head of the Parapsychological Laboratory at Oxford University. Abrams sent back a report explaining that ESP appeared to exist but could be neither understood nor controlled. The subject was given new life by Doctors Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ from Stanford Research Institute SRI. At the same time, Soviets makes investigations into psychic abilities too. They show a video of a man who could move in objects only with his mind. The video caught the attention of the CIA and the CIA started a working relationship with SRI. Captain Don Elkins. Don Elkins was born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1930. He held a BS and MS in mechanical engineering and a PhD in philosophy. He was the founder and head of the University of Alaska's Mechanical Engineering Department. He served with distinction in the U.S. Army during the Korean War in 1965. He left his position as professor in order to give himself more time for UFO and paranormal research and became a Boeing 727 pilot for Eastern Airlines. At the time of his death, Elkins was deep into the study of the raw material which he had been researching with Karla Rupert and James McCarty. There are reports of negative psychological interferences having developed during this investigation. Dorothy Kilgallen. Dorothy Kilgallen was a famous newspaper and radio journalist. She worked in England, from 1954 to 1955, and had contact with the highest levels of English society. An unnamed British official of cabinet told her that based on our inquiry we have a flying saucer with a crow of small men, under 4 feet. It's frightening, but there is no denying it. These men came from another planet. She wired these unusual dispatches. These dispatches may have contributed to her death. She reveals that February 1954 was a special hush-hush meeting for all the world's top military chefs. Something had scheduled to take place the following summer 1955. Her death was from an alleged overdose of sleeping pills similar to Marilyn Monroe's death. M.K. Jessup. M.K. Jessup allegedly committed suicide in Florida in 1959. There is no doubt the well-known author of such influential works as The Case for the UFO and The Expanding Case for the UFO had been depressed. Things had not been going well for him. Friends reported him being disturbed by a series of strange events which put him into a completely insane world of unreality. No autopsy was performed contrary to state law. Police sergeant who was on the scene shortly after Jessup's body was discovered, said for the record that everything seemed too professional. Jessup died during rush hour with more than the usual amount of traffic passing by. 3 days before his death his wife had been receiving strange phone calls. We know the Navy was very much interested in what he was doing. He has been at the forefront from the very beginning of the UFO cover-up. Frank Edwards. Frank Edwards, a news commentator, died of an alleged heart attack on June 24, 1967. 1948 Edwards received an advance copy of Flying Saucers Are Real, a magazine article, written by a retired U.S. Marine Corps major. Frank was very interested in the UFO reports that had earned widespread publicity. Edwards was captivated by the claims that the U.S. military knew the saucers were actually extraterrestrial spaceships. Edwards began mentioning UFOs on his radio program and wrote several books on the subject. He was dismissed from the radio program in 1954 for unknown reasons. In spite of thousands of letters in protest of his dismissal, Edwards was not reinstated. Bryant. Bryant, who served with the British commandos in World War II, saw something amazing hovering over a field close to his home, a flying saucer. He was shocked and amazed for a few moments and then made his way to the field. The circular-shaped craft gently touched the ground. A group of 3 human-like beings in shiny silver suits came out and noticed him not to come any closer. He noticed that the beings had overly long foreheads. They have some problems breathing in the Earth's atmosphere. Bryant was given a tour inside the UFO. The aliens promised to contact Bryant again. The UFO rose into the sky and vanished. In the late 1970s, a UFO researcher with ties to the CIA claimed that Bryant was the victim of a form of sophisticated mind control. Experimental drugs were used to induce specific hallucinations. Another possibility was a microwave transmission led to a disastrous outcome for Bryant. Bryant died in 1967 from the effects of a brain tumor. Willie Ley. Ley was born in Berlin in 1906. He studied astronomy, physics, zoology, and paleontology at the University of Berlin. He was one of the first members of Germany's amateur rocket group. He acted as a consultant on Fritz Lang's film. In 1935, Ley left Nazi Germany for Great Britain and ultimately the United States. He was involved in the operations of 2 rocket-carrying mail at Greenwood Lake. Ley had a regular science column called For Your Information in Galaxy magazine. He was the guest of honor at the World Science Fiction Convention. He acted as a science consultant for the Space Cadet series. Ley was best known for his books on rocketry and related topics, but he also wrote a number of books about animals. One notable book discusses sea serpents, dinosaurs, and legendary creatures like the unicorn and cyclops. Ley believed that the legend might be based on actual animals. Ley died at the age of 62 in his home. Gray Barker. Barker was heavily into both UFOs and the occult and also horror movies. Barker was also an excellent atmospheric writer. He was fascinated by the story told by his friend Benders. How he was silenced by supernatural entities. These entities materializing in Bender's bedroom. They had odors of brimstone. They had weirdly glowing self-illuminated eyes. It was nothing like the CIA or FBI people. Bender was the sort of person who responded to threats like the red flag to the bull. They reached under his sink and took out a jug of Clorox. They said, "What is this?" and Bender said, "That's disinfectant. It's very powerful." They took the cap off, put it to their lips, one at a time, and took large gulps of it. They were not FBI, CIA, or Air Force agents.